Okay, let's talk about the worst interview question to be asked. The behavioral questions. I say the worst because I think they stress people out the most. These are the most common questions you'll be asked. These are behavioral interview questions, also known as tell me about a time when questions. And these can stress people out because what if they never had that time? We'll address it, stay with me, but also they can lead to a lot of rambling. So let's talk today about how you will answer tell me about a time questions easily and what to do if you don't have an answer. Okay, so if we haven't met, my name is Cassandra. I am a career strategist and speaker. I help people go from hating work to happy work, and interview coaching is my sweet spot, is my jam. So let me help you answer these questions. Now, behavioral interview questions. Tell me about a time when you handled a conflict at work. Tell me about a time you gave great customer service. These are all questions to see your thought process, right? Not just, ooh, what did they do, but why did they do what they did? So keep that in mind as you're answering these. So there are a lot of different versions now, different acronyms on how to answer tell me about a time when questions, but the most popular is the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result. So we're gonna get into that, but I will say there are times where situation and task blend together in a way that you can't like line item them out of the situation was this, the task was this. They kind of weave together, that I also have just called that context. Give me the context before you give me your action. What do I need to know to go with you on this journey? So for the situation and the task, you're going to want to address things like, okay, well, let's say it was tell me about a time there was a conflict at work. You are going to talk about who was involved in the conflict. Don't forget to say what role you were in. You know, when I was serving as the assistant manager at Amazon over the blah, blah, blah department, a manager in another department and I were butting heads over blah, blah, blah. I am fully making this up on the spot. So like, I don't know if, like, don't take this word for word, but I'm giving you my role in the company it was at. You want to think about giving specifics like that because remember, this person who you're talking to wasn't there. They need something to anchor them to be able to picture what you're talking about. So when you say your role at the company, that helps them anchor. When you say it was with a person in this department, that gives them some visualization. Or it was on a team of 5 people. Like little things like that will help them visualize. So give context like that. And then give the situation at hand. Why were you in conflict? What was the task that the conflict came around? So we were tasked with creating a new proposal for yada, 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 and it was on a very tight, quick deadline of only 2 weeks. Again, I've said this in other videos. You need to then say why that matters. Like, it's implied 2 weeks is a short time, but tell me that this normally is something that we would have a month to work on, but we only had half the time. So, oh, okay, now I understand the pressure's higher. And you can say, and that really stressed out this other manager because it was such a short deadline, right? Like give the context of what was happening. Give the situation and the task, right? So that's first. Then you're going to give your action. So what did you do in the situation? And then why did you do the steps you did? Again, they want to see your actions, but they also want to see the thought process behind it. Give the why. This is what helps connect the dots for the hiring manager or for the recruiter on the other side. So give that action, but give the why behind the action. And then always give the result. People leave this part out. When you are working on your answers to tell me about a time when questions, go through them and say, did I give the result? Not just the result of I felt really proud of myself or we ended up working okay together. Like, what happened because of what you did? Did you finish the task on time? Were managers pleased by it? Did you increase sales by 30%? Did you cut, overspend by a certain amount? Did you increase efficiency? If it's a conflict with someone, are you friends now? Did they say they appreciated what you did because of this reason or that reason? Like, you've got to give that result. The money is in the result. People leave that off all the time. They just talk about their action and end. And it's like, okay, but what happened next? Again, you're essentially telling a story that it's in 3 acts, right? You've got the beginning where you're setting the scene, the action that goes to a climax, and then oddly, people end there. And it's like, wait, no, I need to know that 3rd act. What happened? What was the result? So make sure you always give that result. But how do you figure out what questions they're going to ask you, right? Well, this is where you want to dissect that job description. Look through that job description and see what they're looking for. If it says something about must be able to work on competing projects and prioritize, you better have an example of how you've worked on multiple projects at once. Must be able to work with stakeholders from a range of departments or a range of varying levels. You better have an example of how you've worked with people at varying degrees of seniority or from different departments in a company. If you need excellent customer service, you better have an example of when you've given excellent customer service. And I would probably say if it's around customer service, they're also going to ask, when have you dealt with a difficult customer and you change the situation, right? So you want to have that example. So use that job description to figure out what are they going to want examples of. Whatever they want examples of is going to become a tell me about a time when question, and you can start creating those stories. And here's something people forget that they can do. When you are asked to tell me about a time when question, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. So if they give a very broad question like, tell me about a time when you handled a conflict, and this is a role where you would be client facing, but you're also working on a team, you could say, of course, no problem. Just so I make sure I'm really answering your question, are you looking for a time I dealt with an internal conflict with team members or a time I resolved a conflict with a client? Let them answer. So don't be afraid to ask those clarifying questions. Now, what if you don't have a time when? Well, the first thing you can do is really think through what they're really trying to get out of this situation. So let's say they went more specific and said, tell me about a time you dealt with a conflict with a team member. And this is like your second job, and you're lucky that your first job was a really delightful place to work and you haven't had conflicts with the people on your team or a coworker, etc. But have you ever worked on a group project at school or volunteered for something at church or a community center and had a conflict with someone there? Well, use that instead. Really what they are caring about is how you deal with conflict, not did you deal with conflict in this specific scenario I gave you. So don't be afraid to kind of go outside the range. If it's a super specific answer with them, don't be afraid to go outside that range and get to the heart of what they're really asking about. They're asking about conflict, or tell me about a time you worked on multiple projects at once. Maybe you had a job where you were very singular focused on one set of processes and you didn't work on different projects. But did you just come out of grad school where you were taking 3 different courses at the same time while writing your thesis, while interviewing people, like doing your research? That counts, right? That could be an example of using multiple priorities, multiple projects at the same time. So bottom line, don't be afraid to look at other scenarios. Now, if you are like, okay, Cassandra, all well and good, but seriously, there are things they're asking me about that I do not have an example. Well, for those, you can say, here's what I would do. And you're going to give this is what I would do in this situation. And just give it your best shot with that. You're still going to go through the STAR method, but you're going to make up your own situation and task. So let's say I was working on blah, 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 blah. You have the situation task. This is the action I would take. These are the steps I would take. These are the questions I would ask. Why? Because da, 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 da. Like, give your why behind it. And then say, I would hope the result would be this. So that's worst case scenario. Probably you are going to have times where you've done the thing. It just might not be in the situation they specifically asked for. But if worst comes to worst, you can give a hypothetical. Okay, so that is how to answer. Tell me about a time when. I have a bunch more videos on how to answer. If you want to hear me explain it in some other ways in different situations, you can go watch those here. If you want more help, I have a free interview prep checklist. You can grab that in the description box below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.